I have a 6-year-old godson named Harry, and he's a really gorgeous, lovely little kid. His 3 older brothers and sisters are very athletic and acrobatic and talented. Harry, not so much. Whenever I go and visit his family, the older siblings usually put on some music and have a bit of a dance-off, and the 2 older sisters do some great coordinated dance moves, and they're very flexible and been practicing, and the older brother has a few karate and parkour moves he kind of throws in there too. But then Harry kind of sort of slides along and throws his arms around a bit and giggles, and then rolls on the floor a bit and flops around, and rolls off and sits down again. That's about all he does. If it was a talent quest and I was the judge, then I'd probably give Harry about 2 out of 10. He's just not very good at dancing. But of course, I don't judge him that way. I love Harry as his godfather, and just like his parents do, so we all keep on encouraging, saying, "Oh, well done, Harry, good on you, mate, that was really nice." And we encourage him to keep on going and keep on trying. That's what people do when they love someone. They judge much more kindly. And that's important for us to keep in mind when we listen to tonight's gospel of Jesus' great parable of the sheep and the goats. This weekend we celebrate the feast of Jesus Christ, the universal King, and that one of Jesus' rights as King is to be judge, the judge of all creation and all humanity at the end of time. And so Jesus creates this beautiful, very graphic parable for us where he judges people and separates them into sheep, the good people, and goats, the bad people. And at the end of the parable, the sheep are welcomed into the Father's kingdom, but the goats are sent off into the eternal fire. And this is a pretty awful, graphic sense of judgment. And I think that's shaped many people's fear of judgment, and indeed fear of God. But we have to remember who we are being judged by. We are being judged by Jesus Christ. And we're not being judged by someone who has it in for us, who wants us to go to hell. No, far from it. We're not even being judged by someone who is impartial and fair. We are being judged by Jesus, who loves us, who has already died on the cross for us as an expression of his love. And so, a bit like my love for Harry, Jesus' love for us colours his judgment of us. That Jesus judges us in his love. And so that should take away the fear we might have that we're going to somehow be tricked or just fall short and be thrown to hell. Far from it. We have to admit there in this parable, there's certainly the possibility of judgment and hell held out to us. That's a reality we can't escape. But remember that we are being judged in love and by someone who loves us. We are all Harry. We are all just a kid kind of flopping around the floor in terms of the moral perfection we might want to attain to. But we are loved, just like Harry's parents and I as his godfather love Harry. So it's really important for us to keep that in mind. But also to remember the first half of the parable is all the ways in which we can make God pleased. That Jesus holds out 6 different ways in which we can serve him when we feed the poor and when we feed the hungry and give water to the thirsty, when we clothe the naked, we visit the sick and the imprisoned, when we help those who are in need. We are doing those things to Jesus, and Jesus counts those things as being done to him. So he judges us and says, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Come share in your master's happiness." We have to remember this half of the parable comes first. This is the part that really matters to us, because this is the part we are all striving to do, to be Christ-like, to see every person as Jesus. And it's exemplified in the example of St. Martin of Tours, who one day saw a poor man begging and was cold, so he cut his own cloak in half and gave half to the beggar. That night he had a dream in which Jesus appeared to him dressed in that same cloak, showing that what Martin did to this poor man, Jesus counted as Martin doing to him. So that's the way we want to interpret this parable, as about love and about what we can do for Jesus and in his name. And if indeed we have failed him, as of course we all fail, there are many times which we'll identify with the second half of the parable, that we failed to serve Jesus and the poor and the needy and the weak and the vulnerable. Yes, we have all failed. Yes, I have failed. But I trust I'm being judged in love by Jesus, not harshly. That's going to be important for us when we face our judgment at the end of time, but it's also important for us when we think about how we might be judged here and now. I know many people are fearful of going to the sacrament of reconciliation because they fear in what way the priest might judge them for their sins. But it's really important to say that I and all priests try really hard to put on Jesus. When we sit in the confessional room, we are putting on Christ and being in persona Christi for you. So we always try and think, not how do I feel about this person's sins? We have to think, how does Jesus feel about this person and their sins? And I find myself so often in confession these days encouraging people, because even when we admit our faults and sins, it reveals where our heart is truly at, that we are striving for holiness and goodness and do what is right. And the very fact we've noticed what is wrong is a sign that our conscience is good and we are growing in holiness. So I want to say to you, the sacrament of reconciliation is not a place to be scared, because if we are to be judged in reconciliation, we are judged by Jesus, who loves us like I love my little godson Harry. So let's take hope and comfort that Jesus is the great King, the universal King, whom the Father has placed all things at his feet. And he loves us and wants us to spend eternity with him and a joyful life here on earth with him as well.